history that goes back almost 60-some years, the future of the Delaware riverfront. And over time, as the city took actions to create an organization called the Pennsylvania Corporation to manage change, there were a number of failed attempts to really come up with a long-term strategy or plan that was implementable for the riverfront. So a couple of things were happening in the middle of the last decade. In 2004, the Pennsylvania State Legislature in Harrisburg passed legislation that created gambling in Pennsylvania. And there would be 14 casinos in Pennsylvania, and 2 of them would be in Philadelphia.
Right.
And at that time, the legislation took away our control over what these looked like, where they went. This is typically a local control issue called land use prerogative or zoning. The legislation stripped us of that, and there was a lot of intense pushback from the citizens, as well as the city itself, in terms of wanting to have a control over where these went. So that was happening. There were low interest rates before the real estate market crashed, so there was real estate speculation. There was a 10-year tax abatement that the city council had passed in the late 1990s that was also spurring speculation and development. And this particular area along the riverfront, because of the success of Center City and the Center City district in making Center City such a livable place, development pressures were expanding out beyond Center City into Fishtown and Northern Liberties and places along the riverfront, and you had a confluence of all of these issues, the casinos, the low interest rates, the tax abatement, the change in demographics, and there was no plan. And so there were all of these ideas floating around there, and added on top of that you had a zoning code that was so old in Philadelphia that any change of use, so if you went from industrial, which is mostly what the riverfront used to be zoned for, to build high-rise condos, you had to get a change in use, which meant you had to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment or to City Council, and all of that meant that you had to negotiate with the neighbors in order to get the use changed. So there were all of these negotiations going on up and down the river. There was lots of speculation because casinos were coming. There was no plan. And finally, the first district councilman, Frank DeCicco, said, we need a plan. He was getting a lot of pressure from his constituents. He was up for re-election. And so all of this kind of conspired in the summer of 2006. Penn Praxis, the office that I run, had developed over the preceding 4 or 5 years a reputation of leading civic conversations about the built environment. We did a series of forums with the Penn Project for Civic Engagement, Harris Sokoloff, and the editorial board of the Philadelphia Inquirer. At that time, Chris Tulos was leading it, on the future of Penn's Landing. We did a series with them on school design in Philadelphia. We worked with the Daily News and Sandy Shea on casinos and their impact on the city. So we were seen as neutral and honest, one of the few who could sort of bring all these factions together. And in the summer of 2006, I was asked by the aide to Councilman DeCicco if I would do this project, knowing that if the councilman could get the mayor to sign on, the William Penn Foundation, another very important part of the story, would fund the effort to make it happen. So all those things happened to work at the same time. I gave them 4 conditions. I said this would be citizen-driven, so it would not be the typical backroom deal-making that had characterized Philadelphia's development landscape for generations. Meeting would be open and transparent, so all meetings would be public. There wouldn't be special places where the 6 people who make decisions would make those decisions. The press would be involved, so everyone would have access to the press. They would cover all the events. Op-ed and opinion pages would be able to kind of help shape the conversation. At the same time, we created, again with William Penn money, a website called planphilly.com, which has now gone on to become a respected voice for planning and development here in the city, but it came of age during the planning process for the Central Delaware, covered the process, and enabled me to come through with my promise of creating an open and transparent process. So everything was videoed, everything's online. You could go back, you could scroll through, you could see what people really said, and it helped to kind of create that sense of trust. The 4th condition I gave is that the process would put forward the recommendations for the operating strategy or agency that would be accountable to the public voice. So that was meant to say, the Penn's Landing Corporation, which for 40 years had failed to deliver the waterfront, but it also sent 2 people to jail because of corruption, because it was not open and transparent, would have to go.
I intend to appoint new members to the board within the next 30 days. And from now on, board meetings will be open to the public. Annual reports will be published. The website will be informative. The corporation will operate with the same high ethical standards that I've demanded for our own city government.
In the short term, we're looking at things that the city is planning to do anyway. The proposed water department improvements to the sewer in Washington, the future implementation of a trolley along the waterfront, the ultimate rebuilding of I-95, although we recognize that I-95 will stay essentially in its configuration, but we can make underpasses and overpasses across it better. So we're using other projects, relating strongly to other projects that will do things within the area that is our responsibility so we can get the most out of every public dollar that's invested. Our board has now, that's been in existence since January of 2009, so a year and a third or something like that, is really moving forward with the master plan that will take the next step beyond the civic vision to really get to a point where planning, zoning, and investment of public monies for the waterfront can occur, as well as attracting private development. That during the development of the civic vision for the waterfront and the action plan, in which Penn Praxis or the William Penn Foundation, as well as the city, were very involved. There, a wonderful sense of stewardship and engagement of all different kinds of people was created around caring about what happens to the central Delaware waterfront. So what we've done as Delaware River Waterfront Corporation is really to continue that conversation. We've had, I think, I'd have to give you the exact numbers when I have time to think about it, but we've had a number, I think 4 or 5 major public meetings about the Ray Street Pier. We invited people to comment on what they wanted there. We showed them alternatives. We've presented to them the final design, and it's been a wonderful supportive reaction. We are about to have early in June the first significant meeting for where we're going with the master plan when the analysis phase ends, and then we'll have a second major public meeting when we've considered alternatives, and a third when the final master plan recommendations are coming together. And large numbers of people turn out. It's really wonderful and contribute very constructively to the conversation. Now, that's not to say there aren't hard issues. Parking's a hard issue. Casinos are a hard issue. Congestion, as there's more development along the waterfront or more reason to go there is a hard issue. But it seems to me that there's a wonderful spirit among the citizens who are engaged in this, and that we're going to keep that conversation going to be sure that we have the long-term support so that the waterfront can be realized over the really, truly decades it's going to take